orchestra director at Opera North, and today, Sunday the 15th of May 2011, is a really exciting day in Opera North's history, because we have our first rehearsals for the Ring cycle. The Ring is one of those great, almost monumental operas, and one of the pieces which every opera company has to perform, and we've never performed it, so we're actually starting that whole process today. So it's really quite an extraordinary day for members of the orchestra, particularly members of the orchestra who have been here for a number of years, because I think a lot of us thought we'd never get a chance to do the Ring cycle, because our theatre, our lovely Grand Theatre here in Leeds, is not big enough, it doesn't have a big enough pit to fit the 90 members of the orchestra that you actually need to perform this work. So the fact that we're doing it in Leeds Town Hall, and then the Sage Gateshead, Symphony Hall Birmingham, and the Lowry in Salford Keys is our way as a company of really us being able to perform what is one of the real great operas. It's a very exciting occasion, actually.
Okay, so
Leute den Lohn, was gibt euch zu bedingen?
I'm Michael Druitt, and I'm Wotan for the first part of Wagner's Ring cycle, the Das Rheingold. Wotan is the king of the gods, the all-empowering man of the world, who's out to conquer the world, control the world, and really take his destiny, and take the world's destiny forward. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. I suppose it's the King Lear of opera as well, in a way. It is a great challenge, the hours and the hours it takes to learn this music and understand this music. Well, I suppose it's a lifetime.
can we talk a little bit more in
Being part of Wagner's Ring cycle, be involved in it, is a special thing for a singer, and a special thing for the audience. It's a journey we all go on through this.
Setzt ich werbend daran, wie töricht hadest du jetzt, ehe ich dich Frauen noch mehr als dich Frauen.
There is nothing quite like for a singer standing on the stage, and you've got all of that wonderful orchestra underneath you rumbling away. The end of Rheingold is absolutely wonderful, the entry of the gods' music, and to stand on stage and be part of that is a very, very special thing.
Auf anderen Land, verleihen, ich bin nicht feil.
I'm Chris Bradley, I'm Principal Percussion with the Opera North Orchestra, and this is my colleague Graham Hall. Well, this is the moment in the opera where Walküre and Wotan meet up with the dwarfs, Alberic's dwarfs, who are there. They're like slaves making the ring.
I'm Richard Wagner, and I'm the music director of Opera North, and I'm conducting these performances of Wagner's Ring cycle. There are many modern themes within the Ring cycle. I mean, I think that Wagner himself, as a composer, he had this idea of what he called the Gesamtkunstwerk, which is this whole art form. It embraces all the different sort of art media: music, drama, scenery, painting, everything. There are so many themes that resonate today. I mean, one of them is the sort of the vulnerability of even a god. I mean, in a sense, the gods in this, they don't feel sort of immortal. They have human values. They have human greed, and this lust after the power of the ring. The vulnerability of these people is very, very real, very human, despite the fact that we're dealing in gods and dwarfs and all these different sort of mythical characters.
Tuesday afternoon, doing for the second stage and orchestra, and there they all are, up on the platform, 18 anvils, God knows how many harps, very noisy, but fantastic. Well, I'm finding new things and learning the role, so it's for the first time that I've done this, so it's a whole new experience of learning the role, learning the style, finding the character, finding who my Wotan is. One thing that has been great during this process has been actually working with Richard Wagner, who's been really good, and we're trying to collaborate, find a way that what the music means to us, how we can develop it, how we can explore it. But I think we're going for slightly faster tempo, more conversational. Other conductors have different ideas, so we're working and trying to find the best way to tell this story in venues such as this.
My name is David Greed. I'm the leader of the Orchestra of Opera North. A seat I've been sitting in for about 32 years. For a fiddle player, or actually for any string player, you're faced with pages and pages of what we call black notes, semiquavers, lots of notes to learn. It's just, once you've got over the shock of learning all the notes and playing the piece through without a break, it's magnificent fun. But this piece seems to me to be absolutely built for this wonderful hall, the Leeds Town Hall.
Das Rheingold is the preliminary evening to the Ring cycle. It's the first of 4 operas. It introduces us to some of the principal characters and the different types of character. The gods, the Nibelungen who live in the underworld, and the Rhine maidens who live in the Rhine, and also the giants, Fasolt and Fafner. The head of the gods, Wotan, has made a contract with the giants to build their new castle, Valhalla. And unfortunately, he hasn't made a very good deal with them, in the sense that he's bargained one of the younger female gods. Obviously, when it comes to it, he doesn't want to release her as payment to the giants. The whole story of stealing the ring, getting the possession of this ring and the magic Tarnhelm, the helmet, which means you can turn into anything you like, and all the treasure at the bottom of the Rhine, is seen as a way out of this problem and paying people off, paying the giants off. And that therein sets the story for the rest of the Ring. for a conductor, the thing is to create a huge arch, a huge, great sort of curve from start to finish of the work, so that there's a sort of homogeneous whole to it, rather than lots of small episodes added together.
It's always great to see the town hall packed out, and the company's waited a very long time to start doing this piece. I feel really happy for the company. It's great.
It's been a really happy time, really special time. I mean, what a friendly company, what a supportive company. It's been great with Richard Wagner. I mean, we've known each other for must be 20 years, but to come up here and work with him has been really great.
Really feel like 2.5 hours, because you just get lost in the story and the sort of, I don't know, this sort of monumental progress of the piece. So and the adrenaline is amazing. Adrenaline always gets you through, even if you're feeling a bit rough before a 2.5 hour performance. Somehow you sort of get through on adrenaline. But these guys are just amazing. The concentration, stamina is incredible from the orchestra, and I'm really pleased actually for the company, because it is a piece that's, although of course it's got fantastic vocal parts, it is about the orchestra, and that's what Wagner intended anyway.
My name is Anne Evans, and I'm here working with Opera North on their new production of Die Walküre. I say new production because it's going to be semi-staged, but I'm here to work musically with the singers. Walküre is about human feelings, although they're gods. The music is so dramatic. You know, people who don't know it, and I say to them, just listen to it for a while before going to hear an opera singer, and then all of a sudden they find it really grabs them.
My name's Jennifer Johnston, and in this production I'm singing Walküre, who is one of the Valkyries. Rheingold's a bit of a sort of prelude to the rest of the story, if you like. It sort of sets up the journey that Wotan and Brunhild are about to take. I covered Fricka in Rheingold as well as singing one of the Rhine Maidens, and I'm also singing Walküre in this, but also covering Fricka. So in that sense it's nice to have learnt the whole role.
Today is another very exciting day. I can't quite believe it's only a year since we started our ring journey, but today is the first orchestral rehearsal day for the second opera in the cycle, Die Walküre. Following on from Rheingold last year, which was the shortest one of the Ring, being just 2.5 hours, we're now into the first of the really long shows. Walküre lasts a good sort of 5.5 hours, and it is a massive production. And for us also, we are delivering this Ring cycle in 4 different venues. So it needs an awful lot of coordination right across the country to ensure that what we deliver in Leeds also works brilliantly at the Symphony Hall Birmingham, Sage Gateshead and at the Lowry in Salford Quays, and which I think is a really unique thing we're doing. The Ring cycle at Opera North is a really important moment. As the national opera company for England outside London, we feel a very strong the importance of our role in providing these works to our public.
The Valkyries are an interesting bunch. As a group of 9, they form, if you like, an army of warrior women who Wotan can send out to do his bidding. And in fact, in the scene that they appear in, they're all bringing back dead heroes in their saddles. So they are pretty important. However, of course, Brunhild is paramount.
The Ring cycle's a pretty massive piece of work, massive tranche of work. When Opera North first asked me to do this, they asked me really to come up with a framework in which to mount the entire cycle on an annual basis in a concert version. Some people use the phrase semi-staged. I don't like that. I like fully staged concert version because I think the other sounds a bit like an apology for something. All of the visual material on the triptych of screens is prepared before we start rehearsal. It's totally influenced by the music and the narrative of the piece. I think every opera company wants to approach the Ring because it's a fantastic tranche of music. Opera North is a very ambitious company generally in terms of what it tries to do, and I think it's always trying to do new things, which is fantastic.
Say that Die Walküre is the most sort of overtly attractive music in the whole cycle, and I think that's partly to do with the characters that first appear in this opera. Das Rheingold, of course, sets out the basic plan. It involves the initial sort of catalyst for the catastrophe that is the end of Götterdämmerung. In a sense, Wagner, he sort of delayed the introduction of human beings. So in Das Rheingold, we've got gods, we've got dwarfs, we've got Rhine maidens, but mortal beings, human beings, don't appear until the very first scene of Die Walküre. Rheingold is incredibly strong, powerful music, but I would say that in comparison with Die Walküre, it's slightly more black and white because it's setting the scene. And after all, he did describe it as a preliminary evening. In a sense, from now, Die Walküre is the first proper evening of the Ring cycle, and of course it's a much longer piece.
am Annalena Persson, and I'm singing the role of Brynhilde in Walküre in this production. Brynhilde is she's a girl full of life. She is a really strong character, and she likes to fight for what she wants and take her own decisions. That's not good for her sometimes. The Brynhilde is, you need to be a high soprano, but you also need almost the bottom of a mezzo soprano. It starts very, very powerful and with a lot of high notes, and then you have to come down and be more or less a mezzo rest of it. That's something you have to deal with technically. For me, opera is both. It's both acting and singing, and both are really, really important.
Ein Trug voller Schuf, die Schwert, das Feig vor dem Feind mich verrät. Front es nicht gegen den Feind, so fromm es denn wieder den Freund. Zwei Leben lachen dir hier, nimm sie Not und neidischer Stahl, nimm sie mit einem Strahl.
If you perform a piece of this scale in a theatre, something actually would be lost. Firstly, because most theatres don't have a pit the right size for a Wagner orchestra, so they would inevitably have to scale it down, so it wouldn't necessarily sound as good, firstly. But also, this particular acoustic in the town hall is a big acoustic, which means for us it's of a benefit, really. Because we're standing in front of the orchestra, our voices are the first thing that people hear because we're in front of them. And it does mean that I think the complete experience is probably much more thrilling in a way for an audience than it would be in a theatre. And certainly we feel like we have a much more immediate connection both to the music and to the audience. Because of the scale of the music, we feel like we're sort of swept along in it.
Ich nicht ab, nicht wissen darf ich, was sie fühlt, gestrafen ohne.
Well, here we are. We've just finished the show, and I'm elated. I'm quite relieved to get through it, actually. And it's only the second time after the dress rehearsal that we've actually played the entire piece in one go. And I think if there was no such thing as adrenaline, I don't think it would be possible.
It went really well, I think. We hope. The audience response was amazing, and we had a great time. And an indicator of a really great performance is that it flashes by in a second, and it certainly did tonight, so we're thrilled.
Anna-Lena went ill just yesterday, and I only found out about 9 p.m. last night. In fact, I was just about to go to bed. So we worked very hard overnight to fly Kelly in first thing this morning. To take over, and that's potentially a very difficult situation because, of course, Anna-Lena, who is ill, has done all the rehearsals and all the work. We flew her in. She only got here this afternoon, and it worked fine. I mean, it's terrific when you have a singer like that who just comes in at short notice, and you can tell that she's listening to everything that we do.
Into this town hall theater, amazing. The acoustic is overwhelming, especially on stage, sort of in the middle of the orchestra. It was so great falling asleep at the end of the piece and having the orchestra just wash over me and getting to, actually take a nap because I think I had an hour and a half of sleep last night.
And it's been a fantastic project, this. I mean, the cast have been absolutely wonderful. It's been a great team. A lot of very modest people there, and it's lovely when a lot of people are doing their roles for the first time. Some very distinguished singers doing their roles for the first time, and that's a huge achievement. And I think the orchestra have really enjoyed it too. I mean, they've played fantastically. They've been amazing in the rehearsals, very good humoured as well. I mean, it's a very long play, so it's been a terrific experience.
Das Flugfeld.
Very good.
Ein starker Heldenat, die Feinde bestehen. Schwarz, Alberich, schweifst du hier, hütest du Daphnes Haus.
I'm coming back to Wotan from Das Rheingold, and I'm singing Der Wanderer, the third and final instalment of Wotan in this wonderful ring cycle.
Wer ihn rauft, hat ihn gewonnen. Willst du noch mehr, Gott mit dir vor.
Siegfried is the third part of the cycle and is Wagner and nature, really. Whereas we had fire and water perhaps in the first two, we now have nature with the birds and forest, and it explores how the humans will eventually take over, how Wotan has planned maybe for hundreds of years for this to take place. And we see Siegfried reaching manhood perhaps, and Wotan ready to hand over everything to him, to put the trust in him and move the world forward. Siegfried is a creation of Wotan and his vision for how it should be, because Wotan's always there meddling. He says he will let everything take its natural course, but he's there interfering and meddling throughout. And I think, he is taken by surprise, I think, of how Siegfried does develop and turn out. It's not quite perhaps what he was hoping, but he has to put trust in that because he's set these things up and fate has to take this course. So I think, hope for the best. He'll be all right.
Der Fafner ihn fällen soll, nicht weiß.
the relationship of conductor and orchestra is very important in these works on this sort of scale, because there's a lot of trust required. It's very much a sort of a family arrangement. I don't like to see it at all as, I'm saying this is what we do. I mean, I have to make decisions, but I rely on the sort of musicianship, extremely high level of musicianship of the players in front of me who are sort of interpreting it. In fact, a lot of the time we talk about elements of the story and what's happening here, to get the right sort of colours and the sounds out of the orchestra. And I think when they feel, because they're not playing in a pit here as well, they're actually on the stage, so in a sense they're even more part of the story than usual. You're very, very aware of that, and they're on exactly the same level as the singers. So developing for them an understanding of the story and the elements of the story that are important really influences is the way we play. Conducting the ring cycle is, yes, a huge landmark for any conductor, an opera conductor. There is nothing sort of bigger as a sort of a whole. There are other Wagner operas like Tristan, which are also huge landmarks, Parsifal as well. But I suppose it's the fact that the ring takes place over several nights. There is so much music involved, and it's an iconic piece. So it's a huge, huge landmark, yeah. In fact, I will be astonished when it's over at the end of next year to think that we've actually done it. I cannot imagine such a time.
My name is Matti Turi, and I'm playing Siegfried in Wagner's opera Siegfried. Siegfried is about love and pure action. I am very, very much amazed how Wagner has built up this music. The people argue, people loves, and all those emotions are very, very purely in Wagner's orchestra partiture. And it's very, very understandable for everybody who comes to watch this performance. We find there all moments what we can't imagine. It's fear, it's love, it's furious things, it's sounds from nature, wood, water, sunshine. There's everything. It's very simple to understand this music.
Well, I'm sitting in front of the orchestra, as you can see, as big as ever. I suppose the most unusual orchestration aspect is right behind me, the Wagner tubas, and along with them in the same group, the contrabass tuba, which is very clear to see when you look at the stage. The feeling is very different being on the stage, and I would say particularly for the audience, where in the theatre they would not necessarily see the music being played, they would hear it, but they wouldn't see it. They can, in this configuration, they can actually look at the players who are playing. They can look at the string players scrambling around. They can look at the brass players going red in the face, and it's it just adds to the tension of the evening, I think.
My name is Sir John Tomlinson. I've been singing Wagner's music for about 40 years, and I'm here as artistic consultant to this production to give feedback to the team, to the conductor and the director and the singers about everything that I see and hear, and to coach the singers individually on their roles. It's very interesting, these performances here in the Town Hall at Leeds. The orchestra is sounding absolutely fantastic under the direction of Richard Wagner. It's semi-staged, so of course all the singers are singing their roles from memory, of course, and behind them are projections, very beautiful atmospheric projections behind the orchestra, which sort of conjure up the atmosphere of the piece. The text is there, the surtitles in English. It's very accessible for, I think, for a new public, you know, for public coming to see the Ring for the first time. You could literally walk in from the street, sit down and enjoy this performance. There are some great scenes in the Ring cycle. There's some great scenes in this opera. Siegfried forging the sword in the first act. The Wanderer questioning Mima in the first act too. The wonderful pastoral scenes in the second act, the killing of the dragon. The love duet at the very end of the piece is just a wonderful scene. But I suppose the thing I always look forward to most is the beginning of Act 3, where Wotan goes to Erde, the earth goddess, and conjures her up from the earth, forces her to come up and forces her to confront him, and they have an epic argument about life and death and the meaning of existence. And this is Wagner's music at its greatest.
Hi, I'm Eric Green, and I'll be singing the role of Gunther in Richard Wagner's Götterdämmerung. Gunther is a prince, number one. I mean, he's the heir of all of what the Gebicht has at this what they have at this point. But he's very insecure. He's very he's weak in decision making, and you know, he's just not a strong leader, but he's a leader nonetheless. But he and his sister are, I think, are very close, and he and his brother Hagen, which is his half brother, we have a little bit of there's always some type of unrest in our relationship, but I depend on Hagen to validate the decisions that I make, to give me suggestions about things, you know. And so I'm dependent on him, but I'm never weak under him, you know what I mean? I'm just not secure as a leader. And even as a person, I mean, there are things that I think that Gunther is ashamed of. The fact that he's not married, that he hasn't found a wife, that he does have a problem with his self-image and what others think of him. So, you know, and these qualities, you know, it's so funny. You can always bring them to modern time. For the last week, we've been just getting into the role from a dramatic standpoint. Musically first, I think we did, and then after that we started working with Peter from a dramatic standpoint. It was very different. This setting is very different. We are not able to interact with your colleagues, but you're playing everything front. So it's that's been it wasn't a huge adjustment, but it is when you're singing to someone else and you're looking for that reaction to get your reaction. It's kind of weird. Today, had an opportunity to work with John Tomlinson, Sir John Tomlinson again, which he's really not that at all, not Sir John. He's very, very approachable, and I tell him that it's been inspiring, informative, and just it's been great, working with him. And he says, "Oh wow, those are so great adjectives you use," but no, I really mean it. I really do mean it. Just to have someone to impart who's done so much of this type of repertoire, this Wagner repertoire, and the German rep itself, and it's great, because we have the same type of approach to producing sound, and and him being, very seasoned in his work, he looks right at me and say, "You're not doing this," So all of my faults are, really very much so pronounced with, he's able to see them and then pick them out. Then I make the adjustment and it's great. So it's been, that's really wonderful. I think that's been a great asset.
Reaching the final part of the cycle is something I've been sort of dreaming about for quite a few years now. It's very difficult to imagine that we've really reached this point after so much time. It's a colossal journey. It's taken up quite a lot of my life. I think there's also a sort of sense of relief that we've got to this point and that we're winding up the story. It's a sort of piece, because there's so much musical material that's carried from one opera to the next. You're in a way reacquainting yourself each year, each summer, with some of the same music that you've had the previous year, but in a rather different form. And it's very nice to be sort of squaring all the circles and wrapping things up. Conducting Götterdämmerung presents the same sort of challenges that the other operas do, in the sense that for a conductor it's the maintaining a huge arc from start to finish. There is so much detail in there, but at the same time you mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture. So it's in a sense not sort of not failing to see the wood for the trees. And Götterdämmerung has its own challenges, which are, it is actually bigger than any of the others, and it's a more consistently sophisticated piece. Musically it's very interesting because Siegfried, the previous opera in the instalment, the last act of Siegfried was written at a slightly later date than the first two acts, and you can really tell that. It's more complex musically. It takes a lot more intense rehearsal time than the other two acts of Siegfried, I've found. And interestingly, Götterdämmerung, which is more chronologically written at the same sort of time as the last act of Siegfried, presents you with those complexities, but right from the beginning to the end. The format that we've done the Ring cycle in has worked unbelievably well, I think, more than perhaps we'd ever expected. It doesn't require such a level of preparation necessarily for members of the audience. I'd very much like to think that people can arrive in the concert hall off the street, and the orchestra, of course, is right there in front of you, completely contrary to the composer's wishes. He wanted the orchestra to be heard and not seen. But because we've had this format, we could never have done these pieces in the theatre because the orchestra's too big for the pit space. So we've made a big feature of the orchestra, and that, I think, is a big plus. And it's certainly been a different way of doing it, if you like, unencumbered by sort of sophisticated directorial concepts and all about the storytelling. And I would like to think that Wagner would appreciate that.
Well, now that we're approaching the last part of the cycle, which of course is Götterdämmerung, how does it feel? It feels like we've been doing this for a long time, because it's been going on for 4 years. But this is very much the climax in every sense. It's the largest. It's the largest of all four pieces, both musically and in terms of time and in terms of what it's trying to say. So it's a huge thing. We did a run through of the piece on Friday, and I think that was the first time really that shows you just how huge it is. It's also the first of them that actually uses chorus, so that's very exciting. And it also has a very complicated story. I mean, they all have complicated stories, but this in a way is the one that literally takes it full cycle. And there's a lot of very tricky things to get around in terms of storytelling. The Ring project has been very successful so far. We have the final part to go, and I'm obviously hoping that success will be continued. But certainly the response that I've had from people is that they've really enjoyed the clarity of the narrative. It's a pretty difficult narrative to actually tell in any terms, and a lot of people have felt that the reduced staging of it has actually made it clearer in terms of understanding the story, getting to know the characters, and the stress for me has been on each individual character, showing us what and who that character is, and I think that's been bounced back from audiences. They've been coming up saying, we really understood it, we really like it, we like having it told to us in this way. And of course the music is incredibly powerful. Having performers in front of the orchestra, having the orchestra in view, not something that Wagner wanted to happen. He always wanted to hide the orchestra away, although I suspect he might feel different about it now. And I think that makes it a very exciting event. I mean, I seek to create... I think I've probably said this before in interviews, but I hate the phrase semi-staged because it sounds like an apology, and I regard this as being a fully staged concert version of the piece, but very much a piece of theatre in its own right, and that seems to have had a huge response. I hope it will continue with Götterdämmerung.
My name is Orla Boylan, and I play Gudrune in Götterdämmerung. It's amazing when you don't have eye contact with people. In this production in the semi-stage production, we all have to face out to the audience. So basically, you're almost looking into the darkness to address the person that you're talking to. And what we have found is that it takes amazing energy to do that. And the only thing is you don't get energy back from somebody. So it's actually quite tiring to do these productions, semi-staged, because you just don't have the play-off of somebody else. And it's a most unusual situation to find yourself in, to maintain that concentration when you're getting nothing back from anybody else. So it's unusual in the fact that we don't do a lot, we don't move a lot, but it's almost twice as exhausting. The accessibility to the audience, that's what I feel is so different. We often hear of opera houses which have surtitles to aid the audience, but here we have the narration, which is fantastic, and it opens the whole story up to them. So I feel the whole combination of the narration, the surtitles, the lighting, and us just we're all dressed in black, so we feel very part of the whole story. I think the whole thing together will give a great sense of the whole piece to the audience without feeling in any way austere to them, because I feel a lot of people will be turned off Wagner because it has this reputation to being so off limits to a lot of people, but I think this is very much for everybody.
My name is Olwyn Meller and I'm singing Brunhilde in Götterdämmerung. The immolation scene in Götterdämmerung is the biggie, the thing that everybody works for, and in many senses is probably the most famous part of the whole ring. I mean, it shouldn't be like that, but I think because it's the end of 4 operas, an audience, if they've been to everything, are hugely dedicated and they're waiting for that big finish, because the immolation scene is a sort of précis of everything that's happened in the ring, musically and emotionally. You've got all the different themes of the other characters, all the themes that Wagner wrote that represent different aspects of life and emotion. And yes, it's huge because of the journey of Brunhilde that I've talked about, the emotional journey just in that scene. It's a self-sacrifice, the immolation, and she does the right thing in the end, but I think what she's had to go through to make that decision is really hard. So it's not just a vocal marathon, really, singing the immolation. It's also an emotional marathon, because suddenly everything that you've been talking about for the last however many hours of 3 operas as Brunhilde are conjured up into those last 20 minutes of the opera. Yes, it's a difficult scene, but in many ways it's not the most difficult, because you're vocally and physically warmed up really well by then. You're not at the very beginning of the act. You've had an interval between acts 2 and 3, and no, it's a kind of elation, I think, when you actually go into that scene and seeing the dead Siegfried, and suddenly she knows what she has to do. So it's all those different elements, I think, that come together. And yes, it's you go into it with a feeling of knowing what has to be done, not just as Brunhilde but as yourself, me as Olwyn. And yes, and I think in the right hands, and that's what we have here. We have a wonderful orchestra and conductor in Richard Wagner. We're able to find all the colours and nuances and use of text so that the audience don't miss out on anything, and we have lots of visual aspects in this format as well. So I think there will be fireworks at the end.
When I first started conducting, there's no way I'd have ever imagined conducting a piece like this. No, it was far from my mind. But having said that, I'm jolly glad I did it with this company, because doing it at this stage, knowing members of the company as I do, you're performing a piece of this scale for the first time with people who share your enthusiasm for it, and a lot of whom I would count as friends. And I think for me, that's a linchpin to be performing this piece with this company, which I know very well. Now in 2016, of course, we're doing the whole cycle, the Ring cycle, in a number of performances, but with all 4 operas in succession. So that's going to require a sort of a different way of thinking, in a sense. I would imagine that doing the whole thing in a week, I mean, obviously that's going to be a big stamina issue, but I found that the sheer sort of storytelling element of the Ring what's got me through each individual opera. I've particularly enjoyed that sort of idea of narrative during each of the live performances, and I think that's something I would take through to the complete performances, so that you're, instead of dealing with the one, you're dealing with all 4 of them in turn. When we started this project, I just couldn't imagine a time when we would have completed it. I mean, to me it was an unimaginably huge journey to take. And so now we've got to the end. I mean, I'm completely exhilarated. But I just look back, I can't believe we've done it, actually. Not just the project as a whole, but actually even the individual numbers, they seem individually so huge that I'm in a sort of state of ecstasy, if you like. We've reached it, we've done it at last.